Drivers here are tired. They're tired of being exploited and treated like sharecroppers of old. Truck drivers in the United States, as well as other parts of the world, I'm sure, are routinely treated as if they are a commodity.
There's the word.
Used, abused, and thrown away.
Yep.
Guess what? Hell no.
G'day and welcome to the Courier Academy. Today we've got, in my opinion, what's to be our first really big headlining guest. I know I might have embarrassed him by saying that at the moment, but he's a super important guy. His name's Billy. I found him on an amazing documentary that was done by some very special people in the US. That documentary's gone absolutely viral. Billy was the star of that show and he's the star of our show today. So Billy, welcome to the Courier Academy, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, Justin, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Peace and solidarity to my brothers and sisters in Australia.
So for all of you that are wondering why I'm talking to an American truck driver here in Australia, in Sydney, from the Courier Academy, I took my company Yellow Express to the US back in 2017, 2018. We started in Miami, Florida. Holy hell. Have you ever been to Florida? Have you ever been to Miami, Billy?
Oh, God, many, many times. I kind of like Miami, although there's no truck parking anywhere near Miami for truck drivers. It's just like being in a tropical island, only with more humidity.
Yeah, look, the weather's definitely good. I don't know about those stand your ground laws, but anyhow, that's another subject. We started Yellow Express in Miami, and very quickly I started to see the state of play with the little guy, the guy behind the wheel in the US. And, you know, there was coming from Australia, and we're just a completely different country. Australia, as far as, you know, healthcare is concerned and workers' rights and all that sort of thing. But we're starting to import some of those things that I see that are happening in the US, you know, the living wage and all that sort of stuff. There's so many similarities that I can see that we're starting to import here. I think it's a big problem. I think it's not only on the horizon, I think it's on our shores at the moment. And when I saw your documentary, and then obviously seeing the messaging was, you know, you used to be on $100,000 a year and now you're not. And now you're at the front line of, strikes and protests and all that sort of stuff. So I'd love to talk about that.
Of course. But when ask away, I can tell you this. I'm in West Texas, in Odessa, West Texas, which is the heart of what's known as the Permian Basin right now. I've been here for a little more than a month. I'll be here for about another 3-4 weeks. This is the heart of the oil industry, the fracking industry in the U.S. Drivers here are tired. They're tired of being exploited and treated like sharecroppers of old in the Deep South. And we've set a strike date for the first of a series of protests, strikes, various other civil disobedience to back up their demands to be paid for all of their work time, which they are not. No truck driver in the United States is, with the exception of a company truck driver who's paid hourly. Truck drivers in the United States, as well as other parts of the world, I'm sure, are routinely treated as if they are a commodity.
There's the word.
Used, abused, and thrown away.
Yep.
At an employer's discretion. Guess what? Hell no.
I like what I hear, mate. I love what I hear. Let's get to know you a little bit. Let's rewind. Where were you born?
I was born in Syracuse, New York, in June 15th, 1952. So you're giving me a birthday present by having me on the show tonight.
Wow. That's great.
And I appreciate that. And thank you, since we've not met. I owe you a beer if I ever get to Australia.
Mate,
all right?
Make that beer a lemonade, and that's a deal.
We got
which
it.
you call
lemonade too, since I don't drink.
Which you call 7-Up. Oh, you don't drink either. Okay, great. Mate, yeah, so in Australia, lemonades are called 7-Ups over there. So anyhow, that's
okay.
the little bit of a cultural difference. Mate, it's all right. So, and then you went through your schooling system, and then how long before you became a truck driver?
High school, no, didn't become a truck driver until about 30 years ago. I've been a labor union organizer for probably, let's see now, we're in 2024, probably about 53 years. Okay, in various industries, factories, service industries. I've been in construction. I've owned a small farm for a number of years. And then about 30 years ago, while I still had my farm, I got into trucking the original way, hauling stuff to market from the farm, Christmas trees, eggs, that sort of thing. And then gradually stepped up the ladder, so to speak. I've been an owner operator. More often than not, I've been a company driver. Um, in the last 40 years in this country, since deregulation took place, this industry has gone from a very good paying, secure job, heavily unionized, to where it is today.
You know,
Sharecropping.
yeah, on the we'll get into that term in a second, but I've definitely seen a trend where even companies like Starbucks and other companies like Amazon are very anti-union, and they've got these policies where if you don't go and try and start a union, then they get shut down by the companies, and people get sacked and all that sort of stuff. Have you noticed that trend over there? Have you seen that with your own eyes about this very anti-union sentiment?
I've seen it over my entire life. The corporate power structure in North America, but specifically the United States, is extremely hostile towards any working class organizing. And they will not hesitate to shut down a facility if workers begin to organize. The laws here in this country are extremely weak on behalf of workers' rights, and the enforcement is, to one for a better word, almost non-existent.
Yes.
One of the great problems in the last 20 years as we've been organizing in trucking has been the fear by both owner-operators and company drivers of retaliation. I have 4 cases pending right now, including one here in Texas, for discharges due to organizing and collective activity with the National Labor Relations Board. Unfortunately, though, the Labor Board, like so much of other protections for working people, especially truck drivers in the United States, has deteriorated over the last 40 years as well. When Reagan was elected president in 1980, and a year later, the air traffic controllers went out on strike. Justin, you're probably too young to remember that. The total lack of solidarity from the rest of the labor movement allowed the federal government to literally fire every single air traffic controllers and destroy a labor union. What that sent a signal to the rest of corporate America, quite simply, was it's open season on workers' rights. We've been fighting that now for 44 years now.
Yeah.
We haven't made any large steps forward, although in the last, I want to say 4 years now, there's been a resurgence of grassroots organizing against Amazon, Starbucks, in trucking, in heavy industry, especially by the auto workers and the steel workers unions. And it's beginning to build a mass democratic base in working people. Coincidentally enough, one of the most hostile environments to labor organizing and working class solidarity is in the South of the United States. This is where most of that organizing is taking place today.
Yeah.
It's been highly successful, although we've been hit with a Supreme Court ruling today that could have negative impacts going forward. But many people, Truckers Movement for Justice, Tom Exum included, believe that we don't need top-down organizing. We need grassroots organizing.
100%.
Based on a model of solidarity. We believe in cross-border solidarity. Imagine what would happen, Justin, if truck drivers in Australia against major motor carriers were to go out on strike. Some of those carriers may very well have affiliates here in the United States or not. What would happen in that strike in Australia if truck drivers here turned around and said, we're going to stage a one-day strike across the country in solidarity with our Australian brothers and sisters in order for them to win their game?
From what I've seen, and I was in the US for 3 years, and then obviously being an Australian citizen, we've got it pretty good here. So even from the fact that if we get sick, we've got a free healthcare system. My son goes to a great school that's can get a great education. So there's all these sort of flow-on effects. So what would happen here? To be honest, I'm not too sure. But if you don't mind, I want to sort of rewind back a bit about how, and when you said to me, it's like, you got these union busting mentalities. We get told that America is the land of the free, the number one democratic shining star. And so from what I've seen and from what I heard, and I'm sure from your experience, is that actually true? It seems to me unbelievably un-American, if I was to use that term, for it to be a negative, or for someone to be able to shut down a bunch of people getting together and fighting for their rights. Do you understand where I'm getting at?
I understand very well where you're getting at.
So is it bullshit? Is it bullshit?
The propaganda that you adhere to, so many people across the world also believe that, including Americans.
Oh, I tell you right now, mate, I don't adhere to it after I was there for 3 years. It's a total stitch up. There's a term we use in Australia called a stitch up, and I think the most monumental stitch up is and has been occurring in the US for decades now, since the Reagan era, right? On the little guy, where you've got someone like yourself who's you're a time capsule of what you've seen by your experiences. And I can tell you all that star-spangled bullshit that they ram down, most people's throats, and most people believe it. It's not what it seems, and you're living proof of that.
Most definitely, not just me, hundreds of millions of others as well. Let's not go into a long diatribe of the history of this country, but the history of this country has been nothing more than propaganda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have always, or at least since the industrial era began in earnest here in the mid 1800s, this country is controlled by the most powerful corporate class, capitalist class in the history of humankind. It makes the Roman Empire look like a walk in the pond, so to speak. Harken back to a little history. In 1886, here in the United States, a series of organizing and strikes led to May Day, May 1st. We are the only country in the world that does not celebrate May 1st as a working class holiday. Why? Because we were sold out by unions and politicians, and because May 1st, the strikes were led by anarchists and various other people, and we can't have that, quote unquote, because that spoils the illusion of what the U.S. is. No, it actually tells you what the U.S. is. 4 of the leaders of that great strike wave, called the Haymarket Martyrs, were murdered by the state of Illinois. The working class vision in the United States is not a vision of the working class, so to speak. We have the great sociologists and stuff like that perpetuate the myth of American opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, so they call us the middle class. What middle class?
Yeah, there is none.
There's a working class.
Yep.
There's a professional class, and so forth and so on, as I'm sure there is in Australia too, not having any knowledge of Australia that much, other than that I do like kangaroos and koala bears.
Mate, we're going to put it.
Kind of cute.
Here's a serious offer. Would you come to Australia if I bought you a ticket?
I would, most definitely.
All right,
I would
cool.
love to.
I'll show you my 3 pet kangaroos I've got sitting at home. I often ride one to work. I've got a big one.
And you ride them to work?
No, I don't, mate.
Okay, now you're pulling on my shoelaces.
Now, rewinding back to you something triggered me. So you're saying about 4 years ago, there's been a bit of resurgence. So you've been in the fight for a good 30 years, right? Union organiser.
like 53.
53 years. That's how old I am, right? So as old I am, you've been in the fight. And so in the last 4 years, you've seen a bit of an awakening. What do you put that awakening down to?
Workers are fed up.
But
They've had enough.
But how do we know
They can't even
that workers are
support
fed
their
up?
families.
Yeah, okay.
They're fed up because they can't even support their families. This organizing resurgence didn't come out of the woodwork. Many workers, especially in fast food and service industries, have been fighting back for decades now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been under the radar, so to speak. All right. And approximately 4, maybe 5 years ago, depending on the segment of the economy, it blossomed.
Yep.
Like a flower that had laid a little bit dormant, but you knew it was, let's say, a rose bush or daffodils or tulips.
Mm-hmm.
You knew it was there. You saw it, but it wasn't growing, or so you thought it wasn't growing. This has now become widespread, especially in the southern part of the United States, the anti-union stronghold of the capitalist class here. And it's gotten strong. There's a tremendous level of solidarity among different worker organizations and labor organizations like the United Auto Workers, the Southern Workers Assembly, the Railroad Workers United, the Crosscraft Rank and File Organization, the United Steel Workers, Truckers Movement for Justice / Tamak-Soon. There's a tremendous working relationship developing at this point. It's almost unprecedented in my lifetime.
Okay.
It did exist once before. In fact, a very famous expatriate of your country from well over 100 years ago came here with his vision of solidarity and labor organizing, Harry Bridges, and built a union from scratch, one of the most powerful rank and file progressive unions, the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, that on the West Coast. And that union still exists today and is still just as progressive as it ever was. In fact, we are celebrating now the 100th anniversary of the San Francisco General Strike that Brother Harry Bridges and longshore workers led, that built their union into a powerhouse.
This is my take on a strike. If you're out there and you're listening to Billy and myself and you're thinking about doing a strike and all that sort of stuff, you just talked about a one-day strike. This is my take on it. If you're currently, if people aren't feeding their families and being able to provide, work a solid day, and mind you, there's two different discrepancies. In Australia, we have the 8-hour workday. I've been interviewing drivers, and last night I was interviewing drivers on the street that do food delivery. And the normal day for a delivery driver is 12 hours. So how is it that a delivery driver is working 4 extra hours a day, yet still not providing for their families, right? That's a killer. So if you're listening to this and you're considering joining Billy and joining the fight and being a part of a union and doing a strike for one day, why just do it for one day? If you're not making a quid, if you're not providing for your family, then you may as well do it for a week, or 2 weeks, or a bloody month. So, I mean, if anything, I mean, what do you need to live? You need to, pay the rent. You need to eat food and, have enough refreshment and all that sort of stuff. Why don't you just stockpile up on a whole bunch of food, everyone get together and just do a strike for a month? Because I tell you what, that'd send a real message, not a one-day strike, because everything is predicated these days on delivery, on logistics, on the truck drivers, on, we have got so much power, and and if we were to, aggregate that power and think not a day, but maybe longer than that, we've literally got them by the balls. Nothing happens unless something gets delivered.
Justin, not to cut you off, but let me point out what our strategy is. Our strategy is multi-pronged, and you got segments of any economy: Australia, United States, Thailand, Great Britain. Certain segments of the economy are linchpins. Like I said, we're planning something and we're organizing for something here in West Texas. It's going to be a series of things. 40% of U.S. crude oil comes out of this area. Shut the frac sand pits down for one day, you shut the wellheads down. You begin to affect production. We're looking at linchpins to the economy. You mentioned you were down in South Texas in the valley. The largest border crossing for three countries, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, focuses on one city. It's called, the name of the city is Laredo. Block the bridges going into Laredo for even one day. I've got it on a good source of a high level manufacturing executive who said to me a year ago, first he told me I was crazy, which everybody knows.
Good crazy.
Then he said to me, I asked him a simple question. How long before the manufacturing plants shut down? He said 24 hours. It's all just in time deliveries. It's all critical time for the assembly lines.
Yep.
So I said, good. So if I shut that bridge down for 2 days, he said, if you shut the bridge down for 2 days, Billy, you'll be in prison for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
You see, what I'm looking at is strategic points. There are 2 states in the United States. And if you combine it with a certain part of Mexico, those 3 states control fresh fruit and vegetable production across most of North America. If the refrigerated truck drivers, company and owner ops, slow down the deliveries, and I'm not talking even strike, slow it down. If you're supposed to go from Central Valley, California to, let's say, Ohio, which will take you about 2.5 days on a normal driving, make it take you 3.5 days. The shelves begin to shut down. Supermarkets will become bare. We're looking to hit the economy and to disrupt the economic system. This is guerrilla warfare, Justin.
Yep.
We're not strong enough to take the industry down right face to face. They'll crush us. They'll stomp us out like a cockroach. So we're picking certain key spots to hit. The coal mines in West Virginia account for 14% of the coal exported to China. Imagine what happens if that coal gets disrupted.
Yep.
Okay, we've got, as we've told the federal government and anybody in the last year, I've got 4 states in mind, perhaps 5. And when I begin to hit you, I'm going to destroy your economy. And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it because you don't even know who the, excuse my language, I was going to curse. You don't even know who the hell we are.
Yeah.
We're just a bunch of truck drivers.
Yeah. With almost nothing to lose.
We don't have anything to lose because we've already lost it.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
Nothing more. You asked me about a word I've used a couple of times, and I've used it for many years now, what a sharecropper is. I think the best way I can explain what a sharecropper is in Europe, they were called tenant farmers back in the day. They didn't own the land. They rented the land from the boss man. They worked the land, both them, their families, most likely their children even, all year round. And at their harvest time, they bought all their merchandise from the company store, from the boss man's store. They'd bring in what they grew, they'd turn it in, and they'd, quote, get paid. Now, we have a little story we tell like that. At the end of the year, Joe would come with his crops on his wagon or in his pickup truck or a small straight job, and he'd bring his crop in. Boss man would tell him, Joe, you had a great year. You only owe me $2,000. You go home now and you tell your missus your credit is good. She can come to my store and buy anything she needs.
Yeah.
Well, Joe's all happy about that, so he goes home to his missus and the kids. And he says to her, she says, how did we do? And he says to her, we did good. We only owe $2,000. He said, you can go and get anything you want from the store next year.
Yeah.
And she looks at him and said, we didn't make any money. And it's like a rude awakening to Joe. No, sweetheart, we didn't.
Yeah.
That's what truck drivers are.
Yeah.
That's how we are working.
I agree.
That's how so many working people are working. Not just here, because it's happened in Europe. It's happening all over the world.
Yeah, but the US is the epicenter. It's the canary in the coal mine. It's 100%. I've seen it. When I consider transport, I consider myself more humanitarian than Australian because if you ain't pro-human, we're all in the same team. Like there's so many conflicting things that I've come back after my experiences in the US, and I'll get to that in a second. But when I listen to you, my favorite comedian, my favorite American comedian is a guy called George Carlin. Surely you must know
yes.
George, huh?
Yes, George Carlin.
He kind of, you kind of remind me a little bit of him. The way you talk, the way you and he was almost not a comedian. He was still hilarious, but the way he explained things about the system, and it was just
He was a satirist,
yeah,
to a certain extent, and extremely well spoken on
very
what's
articulate.
wrong with capitalism
Oh, mate,
and
yep.
economic and political systems that Australians, Americans, Europeans live under. And these systems are built on an illusion.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have any political commentators that you're a big fan of? Any sort of YouTube political commentators?
No, I'm more of an anarcho-syndicalist than anything else.
Never
I'm
heard that
extremely
word.
left.
Okay,
You've never heard that word?
I've never heard that, but so you're extreme left. Okay, so but any commentators? Do you have any commentators that you're more of a fan of?
Maximilian Alvarez is a reporter here and a journalist in the United States. He does a lot of good work. I like his pieces. Brandy Morin is an Indigenous reporter from Canada. She also does a lot of very good work. We've been interviewed by so much media, whether it be a podcast, television, radio.
But I can bet you
years.
almost no mainstream media would be interested in listening to you.
Well, we've been in the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal, but they're not really interested in us.
I know. Of course
one
not.
thing that worries the establishment here in the United States, it is not necessarily labor organizing or social organizing, economic organizing for justice. It's, can they co-opt you?
Yeah.
You can't touch us.
Yeah.
A few years back, right after the resurgence began among truck drivers, we were invited to a meeting, very high-level meeting with federal government officials. At that point, during the meeting, I turned to one of our members who was with me on the meeting, Ryan Johnson from Washington State, and I texted him, they've done their homework. He later called me and he said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, they know I'm not dead, which means they also know what that means. We, at the rally, at the protest we staged last May 1st in Washington, D.C. against the Department of Transportation, I had one of our members, actually two of them, bring a bucket, 5-gallon bucket, plastic bucket of dirt to the protest. I dumped the dirt on the ground, took a stick, and drew a line in the dirt. And I had about 75 truck drivers step over the line shouting overtime for truck drivers, all hours worked, all hours paid.
Yes.
Show us the shipper's freight bill.
Yes.
And we told the government quite publicly, we're done talking to you. We're done going to your stupid political meetings.
Yep.
Listening to your nonsense.
Yep.
Now we're going to hit your economy.
You know what? It's no secret that politicians in the US will only, represent the people who grease their palms the most. And it's legal in the US. That's the insane thing. It's
legal. It's welcomed. Okay. I mean, the lunacy of the so-called two-party system that is in effect here, and the way everybody will say, we got to get rid of the politicians, clean it up. All right. And then you say, well, why are you voting for the person who represents your district in Washington? And they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, well, my guy is good, or the woman that represents us is good. So your guy is good, but the other 499 are not. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Where do you figure that makes any kind of sense? All right. We told the federal government again today on a meeting, on an all-day meeting that they had over with a task force that we were instrumental, among others, in getting set up. You're corrupt. The industry is corrupt.
It's not just the industry.
Government is corrupt by its complicity with the industry in not enforcing its own laws and rules. You all belong in prison.
Yeah. Look, there's one political commentator that I'm a huge fan of, and I'm going to try and organise something between you and him. And I think he would be absolutely pro what you're trying to do. And he's got the best part of 1 million followers. He's a guy called Jimmy Dore. Have you ever heard of Jimmy Dore?
The name sounds vaguely familiar, but no, I'm going to plead ignorance to him.
Yeah, I went and saw him in Los Angeles at a comedy show. He's a comedian, but he's like that. He's kind of George Carlin-esque, I suppose. So he's got a really great way on taking a point of view and just relaying it for the layman, for the average guy, and getting people to understand, the topic. And the thing I like about Jimmy is there's no such thing. When I hear an American talk about, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? That means, are you left or are you right? So are you pro this and pro that? And that whole two sections, like if I was an American and someone said to me, are you a Dem or Republican? I'd say I'm a nothing, because I agree with some of the things over here and some of the things over there. So where does that put that person? And so Jimmy to me is that type of guy. And what you need, mate, is you need more eyeballs. You need more people understanding that truck drivers are the canary in the coal mine of what's coming to almost every industry, and what's actually happening now, the dismantling of the worker and workers' rights and the ability for them to be able to, provide for their families. And let me rewind a little bit. The reason why I've created the soapbox, that is the Courier Academy, to tell the stories of the little guy behind the wheel, and you're about the ultimate little guy at the moment, mate, is that when I originally went to the US, and I'm going to tell you the story of my company, Yellow Express, and how we approached the US. From what I've learned, minimum wage in most states is roughly around $7 an hour.
$7.25.
$7.25. Okay. That in itself, to me, is astonishing. How is that even inked anywhere? How the hell is someone going to survive on $7.25 per hour?
They're not.
Okay, they're not, and they don't, and we all know that. And so I know that politically at the moment, the big thing that Bernie Sanders, which was a guy that sort of spiked my interest when I went to the US, I was never politically engaged. I can tell you right now, in Australia, almost no one's politically engaged. You guys are in a constant political cycle, right? Constant. Everything's politics. It's like a sport. When I went to the US, I started to get politically engaged because you can't help it. It's just there all the time. And the person that spoke the most sense to me, who was kind of the least bad politician, but still pretty good, was a guy called Bernie Sanders, right? And so he is very pro-union, and he's obviously a left-leaning guy and all that sort of stuff. And he's currently on the cutting edge of the $15 an hour minimum wage, which still isn't enough, right? Still not enough. And so I thought to myself, okay, so how can I bring a product to the US that is Yellow Express, and we are a very unique company, right? And I can tell you right now, I've had the biggest rideshare company in my offices right here. We've had 3 high-level meetings about doing coming to an agreement where I could be an option on their delivery app. We've never come to an agreement because I've never been happy from what I've heard, okay? And everything seems to be predicated on, again, screwing the worker. So when we went to the US, my goal was to start at double what what Bernie Sanders was fighting for. So if Bernie Sanders was going for a $15 an hour minimum wage, we wanted to start at $30 an hour. Now, why do I think I could pull that off? Because our product is kind of like a unique product in the sense of, U-Haul. There's a company called U-Haul. They're a truck rental company.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the only way. 51% of Americans, when they need to move a bulky or awkward item, or they need to move their studio, apartment, or house, and all that sort of stuff, they go and rent a U-Haul, whether it's a trailer, a small van, a large truck. most of U-Haul's rentals are small vans. Yellow Express, our whole thing is we provide a man in a big van on demand. And people might think that's a simple thing to do. Oh, you just get a guy and you just get a van and the van turns up and it all magically happens. It's actually a very highly technical service that we've been developing for close to a quarter of a century, and in its modern form about 15 years. So by the time I got to the US, I thought, let's start at $30 an hour plus tips, because I know tips are a big thing in the US. Australians hate tipping. We don't understand tipping. But you got to understand culturally why Australians don't like tipping is because I can tell you right now, my son, my 15-year-old son, and he's been working since the age of 12 at cafes. He's now a pizza maker and all that sort of stuff. Your eyes would pop out of your head if you knew what he makes per hour. He makes $28 per hour. A 15-year-old kid. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
A 15-year-old kid, right? 15 years. And now he's got free healthcare. He's got free tuition, brilliant tuition. So he's getting a great education. He obviously still lives at home. This is the vast difference that we see between the two. So I thought to myself, you know what? If my son can make close to $28 an hour, why can't a hardworking man or woman in the US provide a great, unique service? And what we pitched our Yellow Express is kind of, when we would meet someone brand new, you need to always come up with, if you're introducing a new product to anyone, whether it's an entire country or a person. So we're Yellow Express. Well, what do you do? Well, you know U-Haul? Yeah, I know U-Haul. Everyone knows U-Haul. Well, it's like U-Haul that comes to you and gives you a hand, right? Oh, wow, that makes sense. Or we're kind of like Uber for stuff. So if you've got stuff to move, large, awkward, bulky items, instead of driving to finding your way to U-Haul, standing in line, renting a van, the van's not big enough, it hasn't got any equipment. We come to you, you book it like you would, say, an Uber, and then great. And people are happy to pay a premium for that. Now, when you pay a premium for something like that, you can get to afford to pay really great wages and really great. And I believe that if you are an owner-operator, all right, that you should be entitled to more money than what you were entitled to if you weren't taking those risks and were simply just an employee, right? You would have to agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yep. I would.
Yeah, so we started at $30 an hour plus tips. Now, a lot of our guys, after tips, because there's a big tipping culture, and the reason why tipping culture isn't big in Australia is because, well, if my son's making $28 an hour and he's 15, why the hell would you tip him? You know what I mean? So, but if if someone's making $7.25, well, of course you have to tip them, because how on earth? So that burden is put onto the consumer. Okay, to order to subsidise businesses because they're not paying people a living wage. That's exploitation. Exactly. Yes. Right. And so these are the realities that, as an Australian citizen living in the US, I'm like, and I was living in Miami at one stage. Those bastards not only charge you, nothing's ever the price. It's always $10 plus tax plus tip. And then in the Miami, it's plus tip, plus gratuity on top of the tip. So double tipping. It's like, fuck me, mate. Like, I just want a salad. I thought I was paying $15, but by the time it's all over and done, I've paid double that, It's insane. It's actually stressful. But back to Yellow Express, we started with that, and it took some time. We got our asses handed to us in Miami. By the time we got to Denver, we started to get traction. The business started to evolve. And, starting a new business in a foreign country, which is why any immigrant that comes from any country and goes to anywhere and doesn't even speak the language and ends up, forging a livelihood or a living in a foreign country, in particular with, not knowing the language, I completely respect, right? That some people that do that. So here I am, a white guy going to a predominantly white country. I can speak the language, and it was still so tough to do what we did. So when we finally got traction in Denver, we had this little sort of, in my opinion, it was almost an example of how businesses should treat their workers. I had really happy guys, obviously, because, we were paying plenty of money. We had a unique service. The customers loved us. They could book a stressful service that would come to them that wouldn't normally be, isn't really available in the US. We had one competitor, but we were streets ahead because obviously we're developing this business for quite a long time. But once we got to that point and things were going well, unfortunately, COVID kicked in. There was a choice where I had to go back to Australia, and I didn't feel comfortable about running a business remotely because there was so much of a question mark as to what I could do remotely with the business. So we unfortunately and very sadly had to shut the business down, and we did the best we could. I can't wait to get back to the US. I've got a great product. I think it will work. I think it will be very rewarding. And what I want to do is set that example for, in particular, American logistics companies to how they should treat their workers and pay their workers. And I segue straight into Amazon. You look at Amazon. Amazon is just a giant delivery business. Okay, you would agree with that? Okay, so this bloke who owns it, who's a brilliant guy, is currently worth something like $250 billion, 250,000
He's riding
million
around in his spaceship.
US dollars. He's in spaceships. He's on TRT therapy. He's got the big boat that, he's got to dismantle a bridge to get it under and all that sort of stuff. And I think to myself, that bloke is about as un-Australian as you could possibly be, because I know if I was worth 200 billion, thanks to, exploitation, right, that's backed by the system that is the stitch up, that is the American system. If I were to give half that back and to the people that helped me to do that and gave them free health, and it's like, mate, you're still going to be okay with $100 billion in the bank, pal. You're still going to be okay with 10 billion. Okay, Billy, I'm sure you'd see your life out if you had a lazy 1 billion in the bank, wouldn't you? So 199 billion going back into the economy, and then you get people like that get scared because Billy boy, my new mate Billy, is organising to try and just simply fight so you and your mates and your fellow workers and your brothers and sisters in the US can just simply earn a living, and that's a bad thing, and he's got a system that tries to shut that down. I find that it's unbelievably un-Australian, right? I don't want any of that bullshit coming to my country, okay? And we have to consider what is currently happening right now. And I think a lot of Australians don't understand that this is actually here, that these things we are starting to import. And so the real fight, the global fight, is happening, I believe, with you, with your movement, and also with the fight that you've currently got on at the moment. And I can tell you right now, anyone that's sitting in the US that's watching this, I don't care. I don't give a shit what industry you're in. I don't care where you work or what you're doing. The bloke that's on the screen right now is literally fighting for your kids, your grandkids, and those grandkids' future. 100%. The trucking industry and what you're doing, and the transport industry is the first victim of the real problems that are coming in to society. That's my strong opinion.
Well, I'll agree with your opinion, and I'll thank you for saying that. All right. Truckers control the world.
Who said who was the big union guy back in the day? What was his name? He got
Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa. Nothing gets delivered unless a truck driver delivers it, or so nothing happens unless it gets delivered.
Right.
And it's true. And here's the thing. So if you look at Uber, right? Uber currently at the moment the company's worth 80 odd billion bucks. Okay. Apparently they're not making money. I don't see that, right? How they're not, but okay, let's just say they're not making money, but they're waiting for autonomy to kick in, like, for
autonomous vehicles,
self-driving cars to kick in. And what are they going to do? The crumbs that are currently being paid to the people actually doing it, they're gone. And we are helping them exist. We are literally helping them exist. Now, what's the flow-on effect? People love booking an Uber. It's super convenient. Beats the shit out of a taxi and shuffling around with cash at the end of the thing. Yeah, it's really fun and it's really convenient. And I use it too, right? But the problem is if we're part of a system that's literally paying for a small group of people, and let's face it, Uber is not owned by the people. Uber's owned by a small group of people, small in the sense of, globally, okay? And so we've got something where you've got a small group of people are at some stage going to take advantage of autonomy, and then all of the people that currently make the crumbs out of driving with rideshare companies are all of a sudden going to be out of a job. What happens then? At least those people are now paying tax. So these big companies have teams of lawyers and accountants that have all these intricate, even when I spend money on Google, my money on my credit card goes to Google Ireland. Why is it going to Ireland? Why isn't it going to Australia and paying Australian tax? Why is it going somewhere else? So we're literally complicit, and we're falling asleep as we're using these companies that are eventually going to take out even the people that are currently working for them that are still paying tax. How the hell is an automated car going to pay tax? It's not. We're literally falling asleep and walking into this. And I don't think you, and I hope you realise, and after me talking to me, how important, and I said this to Jimmy Dore after his comedy show. I was blown away. I thought this wasn't a comedy show. I laughed my ass off, and I also got a good education of what I'm about to get into here in the US. I stopped him as he was coming back. I shook his hand. I said, mate, I don't think you understand how important you are and the things that you're saying. And I guarantee he'd remember that. And so there it is. And I don't think that people understand how important what you're doing at the moment and how critical it is that people get on board with your movement. Seriously, every American should watch this podcast. If you do end up watching this podcast, you need to share it with your fellow workers, no matter what industry they're in, no matter what.
Agree with you 100%.
Yep.
We have fallen into the working class has become...
It's the slave class.
It is.
Yeah.
And what happens is working class that makes a decent wage is complicit in exploiting working class that makes a less decent wage. It is similar to what you were saying about tipping. The wage for restaurant workers in this country is right now, workers began organizing in a very popular fast food chain called Waffle House. I've eaten there. I happen to like it.
I ate that. I ate there when I drove through Texas.
Yep, I like Waffle House.
Diabetes on a plate.
Yep, I like my eggs. I like to see the eggs come out of a shell and not a jar. And Waffle House, you get that, And
but the chicken came out of a jar.
Those workers have just begun organizing, and Waffle House announced it was raising their base wage to $3 an hour.
Oh,
that
I know.
Was with a raise. See, restaurant workers do not get minimum wage. They get a substandard minimum wage. Agricultural workers do not get minimum wage in many states. They get a substandard minimum wage. Truck drivers do not get paid overtime. Neither do restaurant workers and agricultural workers. We are exempt from the federal law that was passed nearly 90 years ago from overtime. Why? We work routinely 70 hours a week. Now, if we were paid correctly, let's say for argument's sake, let's use your $30 an hour for a second, Justin. Let's say I got paid $30 an hour for 40 hours. And if I worked above that, I got time and a half, which would be $45 an hour. Now, if I was to work 50 hours, that additional 45 would mean I'd be making a paycheck of about $70,000 a year. That's well over median income and still less than what we made in 1980.
Exactly. And that's the point.
Exactly the point. All right. So what we're looking to do, we're not organizing company by company. We want to take the whole damn industry on and organize it. Owner operators, small carriers, and company drivers. Okay. And what we're looking to force them to do is bargain with us on a collective bargaining agreement that's going to set minimal standards. Our minimal standards are $150 an hour for a dry van truck, $45 an hour with the benefit package to the drivers. That's still an overtime, both for owner operators as well as company drivers. This way, you have some quality of life. You can be out on the road. I can be out on the road working 6 months without going home.
Yeah, I know. And if you got kids, your kids never see you, and then dad's not at home. It's just so many flow-on effects. Look, let me jump in here. This is something, first of all, can we all just take a grasp on what Billy just said? They've raised the minimum wage for hospitality workers to $3. Raised it
to Waffle House workers. Waffle House.
To $3 fucking dollars. That is mental. That shouldn't. It's just astonishing. Now, you're sitting here and you're thinking, how am I going to, get my brothers and sisters together? How am I going to, take on the system and all that sort of stuff? See, I got a different take on this. Everything is technology driven these days. Just about anyone that does anything want to get on their phones and they want to tap their problems away, right? Also, another thing too, the last mile guy, not the truck driver, but the last mile, the courier, that's the face of the delivery. We deliver happiness. People get that little endorphin rush when they hop on their phone and they tap away and they buy a pair of socks from China, and those socks arrive and they've got a smiley face on them, and sort of we're at that sort of coalface of that, right? But if you consider this, what you're doing is you're currently trying to negotiate with someone that has no goodwill or no intention, or is in their own financial worst interests to do a deal with you. So collective bargaining and you're trying to negotiate with someone. The way I see it, rather than go and ask for ask for more or ask for something that's fair or negotiate, rather than go and be involved in asking for more with the system, why don't we just own the system? I have no idea why, if we've got the manpower to do it. First of all, we have to make sure that we get together, and that manpower, and we make sure that the politicians are voting in the people's best interests. And the only way we're going to do that is by doing things like, striking, and maybe not for a day, maybe longer for a day. I don't want you to go to prison for the rest of your life because you block a bridge, but I do like the idea of you going, I'm going to stay home today. I might stay home tomorrow as well. And a lot of people doing that. And then once you've got leverage, because you're never going to get anything done without leverage. You need leverage. With that leverage, you get to dictate your own terms. So when I look at things like technology, for instance, and everything is technology based these days, if there was a platform or there was a better way to amalgamate not only things like strikes and all that sort of stuff, but also how the work is distributed and how it's paid and who it's paid to, that to me is the real leverage that I think is that we could do. Now, believe it or not, last night, Nicole and I, my producer, we went out onto the streets of Sydney, and we were interviewing these kids that do food delivery. So it's a really big thing in my area for people not to go to their local restaurant anymore, but to buy their food on an app, and then it gets sent to the restaurant prepares it. The technology company then takes 30%, right, of the purchase price of the food, okay, and then gives it to a kid. Then normally most of these kids, they were all students, all of these kids. It's freezing cold. It's dangerous. Okay, there's a lot of them that have been killed on our roads, delivering food, right?
Wow.
And they're working at night time, which is, we all should be getting paid time and a half double to work at night time. This started with me curiously buying some McDonald's fries one night, and just out of curiosity, I thought, wouldn't it be crazy if I could jump on my app? And it was 3:00 in the morning. I had a restless night's sleep, and I ordered some fries. Fries are about $6 here in Australia for some large fries from McDonald's. And I clicked it. I booked the fries. I ordered the fries, and within 10 minutes, at 3 a.m. in the morning, a kid on a bike delivered fries at 3 a.m. That person would have to be awake at that time, be out in the cold weather, okay, and waiting for that job to come up. How much how much could they possibly get paid if it was only $6 to buy it? So if you get the $6 minus the 30%, what's there left to pay someone to come and do that delivery? How on earth is that worth? And this is what I'm saying. When you start to look at minimum wage being $3 in America and it's up to that, what's it worth to be awake at 3:00 in the morning to make a $2 delivery to go and deliver some fries to someone like myself? That's crazy, and we all know that. So, in my opinion, although I think definitely you're going down the path that you should be going down, I love the idea of helping you potentially contribute to what you're doing, but looking at things from a technology perspective and how we can develop technologies to literally take out the middleman and go direct to consumer. That's where I think the future is. And then with that, we've got leverage, because we all know, and here's another thing too. If you look at economies, and I've been a business owner for most of my life, right? Very lucky and very privileged to be in the position that I'm in. I've worked very hard, but I've also been very lucky, and I've got a very good start in my life thanks to my parents. Okay, not everyone gets that opportunity. So when I think about, say we go back to Jeff Bezos with his $200 billion sitting in his bank account, if he gets another $1 billion, which I'm sure he's going to it in the next month or so, okay. What does he do with that $1 billion? He gets his $200 billion and he puts the $1 billion with his other $200 billion. So then he's got $201 billion, okay? Then he's got $202 billion. Now, if that billion dollars, that $1 billion got distributed out to the people that have helped him get to that $200 billion mark, what are they going to do with it? They're not going to collect it and put it with all their other money, because they've got no money. 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So what they're going to do with that money, they're going to spend it. Now, what happens when you spend money in an economy? The economy goes up. It rises. More things get delivered. More products get sold. More tax gets paid. Okay, so that's what happens with working class people. And you know what? There is this mentality, and it's from what I've seen culturally, and I can only speak from experience in the US. There are people that to me, the US system, and by the way, I have no slight on American people. I've met some of the nicest, hardest working people that I've ever met in my life, American citizens. And you're at the top of that list now, Billy, and you're a great bloke, and I love what you're doing. You're very passionate. When I hear you, I hear a guy that is engaged with his cause, that wants to do the right thing by his fellow worker, and I think our job is to put more attention to what we're doing. During that last break, Nicole and I kicked the tin down the road with the idea of potentially even coming over and giving you a hand. Let's face it, Australians are Americans' best friend. We've been to every bloody war with you guys since World War II, and so and Australia's considered to be a mini America. So maybe we could go a little bit more mainstream if you had someone like myself with my accent, because we tend to get away with a lot over there with our Aussie accent, and maybe we can give you a hand. So we'll talk about that later. But when you look at the greed that is ingrained in the American system, and how the worker is just expected to work the most hours, get paid the least amount of money, the little guy is what makes your economy as great as what it is for the people in the 1%. Okay? It's so clear it's not funny. And you're approaching it into striking and wanting to go and ask for more. The way I see it, let's not ask for anything. Let's just take it. Let's own it. technology should be owned for the greater good, not to assist the very few. And I can tell you right now, you look at rideshare companies, and you even look at companies. You tell me that the moment that Amazon has technology for automation, that's not going to happen. It's
already happening in Amazon's warehouses.
So we're all assisting for the demise of ourselves. It's a Terminator movie happening as we speak. It's crazy.
It is. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know in Australia, but here we've now got autonomous truck pilot programs in a number of the marine terminal ports on the East Coast and on the West Coast. And basically, there's approximately 75,000 truck drivers that work those ports. Those drivers are going to become excess baggage for autonomous trucks. They will lose their jobs. And those that will still have jobs, perhaps working on a computer to guide a truck from point A to point B, because autonomous trucks can't drive into the city. What I'm simply saying is that the jobs, quote, that technology produces, as you pointed out, are low-wage jobs.
Yes.
They are not high-end jobs like manufacturing, heavy industry, the way trucking was, longshore dock work. They're not, okay? They're low-wage service jobs. And the service sector of any economy, when a country forgoes its manufacturing base to become more service-oriented, service always takes in a large part of an economy. But when a country just says, oh, we don't need to make clothing here, we can make it in Vietnam or China or Bangladesh, you lose the ability. Manufacturing jobs create, on an average, for every one manufacturing job is created 4 other jobs. Some manufacturing, some service. Service jobs, on the other hand, barely create even 1 job. All right, you're basically looking down the rabbit hole and seeing the future. What we believe in is a sustainable solidarity economy where working people, as you pointed out, own what they do, whether it's through cooperatives, worker-owned cooperatives, however you want to call it. There are 2 trucking cooperatives in the United States right now. There was 3. Unfortunately, one went belly up. They're small operations of under 10 people in each case. That's the kind of economy we have to create, an economy that's both sustainable and owned by the people that do it. All right, whether they're a truck driver or they're a timber cutter, cooperatives are not new. They're worldwide. Some very well known, like the Basque cooperatives in Spain. Others not so well known. Point being is technology can be used to improve lives, but it's not being used that way.
Correct.
I don't know if you're on X or Facebook or any of the other social media outlets. What the hell are we doing on outlets that are owned by multi-billionaires where they're mining what we post, what we comment, in order to sell it to advertisers? That's insanity to me. These
things can be the best and the worst things. The problem is that all the real estate on these things is none of it's owned none of it's owned for the greater good or the wider community. It's all owned by. I know every single thing. We're even putting technology in between romance these days. You want to meet a girl, don't talk to her walking down the street or in aisle 4 of the canned food section at your local. I'm trying to think of what the supermarket. Jump on an app and select from 150 different ones before you meet the right one that really isn't the right one, because by the time you get there, it's a dude.
Sense. I mean, there's no we've lost the personal relationships that come from talking on the phone. No one wants to talk; they want to text.
I'm not a religious man, but I'm going to say Amen, brother.
There you go. It's going to, and it's allowing techno gurus to create AI and everything else. So what are we going to have? Our kids are going to go to school, but the robot is going to do all their homework. So our kids are not going to learn anything. The decadence that will become will basically be a society that's only geared towards its own personal pleasure. No, I can't feel that.
I've got one boy, and he's 15, and I got to say, I'm so excited that I'm a father to my boy. And one thing, if you're out there and you've just had a newborn and you're raising your children, this is my advice. This is my take on raising a kid. I know we're getting slightly off subject, but not really, because obviously the kids of today are the Billys of tomorrow and the Justins of tomorrow. Teach a kid not what to think. Teach a kid how to think, and that's a much greater skill to instill in your children. And I tell you what, if your kid is, my boy didn't get one of these till he was 13, and it was a struggle. He had friends from the age of 3 and 4 that had these things. And you're putting these things in front of your kid. There is technology companies that are manipulating your children at such an early stage already. And again, we've got to start owning more of the real estate and the connectors and the technologies that provide better opportunities, better working and work environment and remuneration through technologies that I believe that should be owned by the greater and for the greater good and not for the very few. That's where I think the real leverage is in what you're trying to do and what I think should happen. And without leverage, you ain't got nothing. All you're doing is asking someone for a little bit more. And if they control and if they got the ultimate power, then obviously, we see, what happens with that power, and that is, utter corruption.
Well, you'll get 2 crumbs today. However, tomorrow, one of those crumbs is going to be taken away.
Yes.
Because one thing a very famous person here said, and probably many others across the world, power concedes nothing unless it's met with equal or greater power.
Correct.
And the corporate class and the more conservative element politically on the spectrum will never concede defeat.
Ever.
They will always come back again and again and again. A large union won several very good contracts, collective bargaining agreements, in the last 6 to 8 months. Very good contracts by multinational corporations with facilities all over the world. And what did the corporations turn around and begin to do? They've begun layoffs.
Yes.
So, in essence, what did you win? You don't have the ability. I agree with you completely, and that's where I go back to the idea of a solidarity-based economy. All right, where it's about the community's good. It's about the people in Sydney or New York or London or Berlin or Moscow receiving the benefits of whether it's their work as well as what's available to them, like technology. Again, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, owns X. And what are we doing on that? There's so many ads on that and so many bots on that platform. It's ridiculous. I utilize it. I have an account. All right. I utilize it, and I have found it to be very enjoyable because I've got to meet through that platform other people of a similar nature, of a similar mindset, and I've gotten to read things that weren't available to me. So in that level, you're only take it one step in the direction that you're going. Why can't it be owned by you and I?
Yep.
There is no reason.
I know.
You talk about the rideshare drivers. Oh my God. When you talked about that, Justin, the rideshare drivers here in the United States, every town, every area of the country, you can order Uber Eats, Grubhub. These are not young workers
Yes.
necessarily.
Yes. Yep.
They are family workers, and they're out there riding those bicycles and those motor scooters around like you can't imagine.
I know.
All hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They get no overtime pay. They are, like you said, they're riding in traffic.
Yes.
People get killed, injured.
For $120 a night.
Right,
Yeah.
which is
I know.
insanity.
Yeah, I know.
That's like insane.
Yeah.
All right. There's a lot wrong with society. And a lot of it is caused by greed. Also, a lot of it's caused by complacency on the part of us,
Yeah.
the average person.
And look, you do have to understand. You talk right now. There's two particular chaps having a conversation from across the Atlantic, and one's of a certain vintage. The other is of another vintage, and I can tell you right now, and the more I speak to you, and you're organising a strike, you've got to consider this. Is a strike for a day going to put a dent in it? Yeah, probably. How about 2 days? How about 3 days? How about a whole month for a strike, right? And because hang on, let me get to the point. The point is this. I think very soon, not too far around the corner, and you'll blink. You know how fast time goes by, Billy, right? I bet you blinked and you were a 20-year-old guy, and now you blinked and now you're not, right? I'm the same. I'm a 52-year-old guy. And I can tell you right now, you're going to blink, right? And that strike that you considered to do for a day or 2 days, and you thought, look, that's going to be a permanent strike imposed not by yourself, but by the company that just stitched you up and put you out of that shitty little second or third job that you used to do and work for them, because autonomy is going to take you right out of it, and you're going to be in a self-imposed strike exile from the company that you used to get the crumbs from. The crumbs are about to go. And unless some real thought gets taken place into a really good plan, and that plan should involve technology, then we're screwed, man. And what's a strike gonna? You're gonna think, geez, I wish I did do that strike for a 2 days or 3 days or a month or half a year, because if you're in 5 years' time, those crummy jobs didn't exist, and they don't exist. What are you doing now? You're doing nothing.
This is true.
That's the point.
This is true. And sometimes strikes or any kind of organizing around social and economic issues does lead to a serious backlash.
Yes.
And workers and people in general have to be ready for that. And sometimes they're not ready, although they think they are.
Yes.
Our reason for using guerrilla warfare tactics, as I said before, is that, quite honestly, truck drivers not well organized enough to take on this industry and its flunkies in the government. And if you try to go up against them in mass with, say, a larger, longer work stoppage, you will get crushed. You will have, as you just pointed out, you will not have even that crummy job. Okay. And a lot of the fact that in trucking, many workers are scared.
Yes.
Because, as you pointed out, most of this country lives paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
There's nothing behind it. And in trucking, most owner-operators are one major repair or breakdown away from bankruptcy, losing everything. I was one of them.
One thing I saw that was just alarming as hell for me, and I traveled all through the US. You can be on a street where there's going to be a bunch of Mercedes-Benz and high-end living and all that sort of stuff. And then that same street, 5 miles down the road, you'll see families living in cars. That was insane. The greatest country in the world? I don't know, man. I mean,
no,
wow.
Again, the propaganda.
Yeah.
You've got, when I was in San Francisco for the first time a number of years ago, I delivered in what was called the Mission District to a very high-end hotel. It was for a convention. And not 20 yards from the loading dock of that hotel, there were homeless encampments all over the street.
Mm.
And as bad as New York is,
Yeah.
I had never seen anything like that anywhere else.
Crazy.
Except in Houston. And, you know, you got homeless people on the street who go to work every day.
Mm.
Why are they homeless then? They make a salary, they make a wage.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Their wage is not enough to afford them a place to live.
Yes.
So they have no choice but to live in tent colonies. We have areas, and it's getting much more widespread now even. You've got areas of the country where you'll see RVs parked on the street and campers for vacations. Very old, very dirty in most cases.
Yes.
And I looked at that in Oakland, in the Bay Area of Cali. And I'm saying, what the hell is all of this shit?
Yep.
You know what it was? It was people living on the street in their RVs. They had bought an old RV.
Yep.
And they were living on the street.
Yep.
You saw hoses hooked up to fire hydrants where they can get water. This is, where are we going? Mm. We are, as a world.
It's not where are you going. It's where have you gone. It's there. You know, and it's going to.
It's there.
It's going to take a real big play, and it's going to take a big ballsy attempt with the right narrative and the right technologies, I think, to turn this around. Look, Billy, we're going to wrap this up, but mate, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun
talking with you, mate. We are going to meet up in person one day, whether you come here or I go over there. I love the idea of coming over and giving that Aussie perspective, and potentially even being a spokesperson for what you're doing and how you're doing it, and how I think, mate, you are the new John Connor. Mate, you know John Connor from Terminator, the Terminator movies. He's the kid that took on the machines,
yes.
mate. Yeah.
Okay.
So, mate, I see you as the new John Connor, buddy, and mate, I think what you're doing is utterly credible. I thought you were a pretty good bloke before I met you. Now I know that you're a champion bloke that I've been talking with you well over for an hour. I can't wait to see you, put a name to your face. You got my number now, mate. We're mates. You call me if you need me, and if I can help in any way, you just let me know.
Will do. And peace and solidarity to you and Nicole. Thank you very much for hosting us, and we do appreciate it.
You're a good man, mate.
Take care, my brother.
See you, pal.